Australia has unveiled sweeping superannuation tax reforms, introducing a 40% tax rate on balances above $10 million while boosting support for low-income earners in a bid to make the system fairer and more sustainable. That's the way the government is selling it today, but there's also been a major backflip. Joining us now is Dr. Steven Enticott from CIA Tax. Good to see you, sir. This is one hell of a backflip.
Well, how long have you and I been watching politics for, Ahron?
Too long.
Too long, I think. And I actually can't believe this backflip because, we were involved in speaking to all the submissions that were put to this Treasury release 18 months ago that we are going to tax unrealised gains. We're not going to move away from it. This is it. We know we're running out of money. We've got to tax wealth. We're coming for superannuation and we're not going to change. We don't want any input because we're not going to do it.
So what did change? The government's well ahead in the polls. What do you think they were worried about?
I think they were just cowards in the end. At the end of the day, what they brought out was absolutely stupid, unworkable law. To tax a gain, to say, okay, well, you've made money this year, but you haven't actually sold the asset. You've made money because it's gone up in value. We're going to take the tax now. And the real sting was, if that asset went back down in value, they weren't going to give it back. So it was absolutely fundamentally impossible to implement. You're basically kicking farmers off farms. Young shareholders are forcing them to sell shares that they might not be able to sell because they might have restrictions on them, just to be able to pay these taxes that actually you haven't incurred left. So it was a dumb, stupid rule, and I think it's great that they've got rid of the unrealised gain element. And I also think it's good that they're taxing people who've got $10 million in super at a 40% rate. At the end of the day, if you've got money, that amount of money in the superannuation ship, if you like, it's too much. It should be taxed. And in another way, they're giving a little bit back to the low-income earner.
Yes, and that's a $4 billion hit to the budget, that little bit back in forward estimates, which they'll have to find elsewhere, and that's always the part that worries us because that's how they ended up down this path of trying to tax unrealised gains because of the spending that has happened and questions over the state of the economy as well.
Well, I'll ask you. I'll be the interviewer for a while. Where are they going to make spending cuts, Ahron? What are they going to cut?
Well, they can't.
They can't
because that's why they're in power, because they are put there by people who want the government to spend money on their different causes, and many of them are important causes. But if the government cuts health or education, we have a new government.
That's right. So if you start cutting, you can't, we know that. So where does the money come from? You either print it, which leads to inflation and bigger problems, or you start making increased taxes.
Well, the idea has been to grow the economy, and that's been on both sides. And when you drill down to a politician, what do you mean by growing the economy? They usually say immigration. Now, that can, from a state level, be from other states or obviously internationally, but that then has led to a supply issue with housing, which has led to prices going up, leading to governments believing that they can get money from negative gearing. Do you think they'll go for negative gearing next?
Never. Absolutely. I think it's been rejected so many times because negative gearing doesn't work. I always tell people, I want a negative gear to get some tax back. And I go, well, I'll give you a 10 grand tax bill for today. You'll get $5,000 back on tax. So negative gearing is actually dumb. If you are losing money to save on tax, it's silly. It's a wise investment strategy if you're investing in property that's going up at a greater rate than what you're losing now by paying a bank a lot more.
Desperate situation though, when we're at a point where governments are having to look at superannuation as a way to raise money for the budget. After all, they've forced us down this path in the 90s of superannuation, told us it's all for us, and a little bit like the Future Fund being raided by Jim Chalmers for government project last year. Now they're turning their attention to super. How, I guess, does the 40% tax on balances over $10 million work in practice?
Well, I actually don't think it's a bad thing. If you've got money in your own name, you're going to pay tax at 50 cents in the dollar. So it's actually a cheaper tax rate than having money in your own name. That's
10%.
right. You can put it into a company and pay 25 to 30% tax, but it's not your money. You can't use it. I always encourage people, if you've got that amount of money, you are going to die. What is your strategy? You should be deploying it now. You shouldn't be sitting on that amount of wealth. We know that this has failed. We know they need more revenue. They're going to come for other wealth taxes. Death taxes has got to be on the cards at some point. So start to deploy now is always my answer. And don't forget the people over 3 million, they've got a 30% tax, which is still not a bad tax outcome. But you've also got to keep in mind they're now indexing it. So I believe the big super funds have really got behind the politicians and said, you are discouraging people for putting money into super because everyone on 200 grand now will hit that 3 million threshold and they're going to face these taxes. So indexing it is probably a bigger loss to the Treasury because we're not going to have bracket creep on superannuation. But don't forget, this goes way back to 2007. Howard came in and got rid of the reasonable benefit limit. But there was money everywhere. We're in the middle of a mining boom that we've never seen before. They went too far. You know, the Liberals went too far. And my view is the Labor has actually brought it back to the position we've got to, big back down, but I actually think it's a right position. And they've come out firmly and said, that's it, we're not looking at superannuation anymore. Because people come into my office and they say, should I put money into super? And I go, look what's on the table now, what's going to be on the table in 30 years' time. So it's a confidence thing.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. As always, appreciate your time, Dr. Steven Enticott from CIA Tax.